Well, let's go to Columbus, Ohio. Greg Frey, former Ohio State Buckeye quarterback, joins us right now. And well, it goes a little bit deeper than that. Not just an Ohio State Buckeye quarterback, but spent some time around Urban Meyer back in the earlier days. I think it was 1985, St. Xavier in high school when Urban Meyer was a volunteer coach. You were a senior in high school. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct. I was a senior quarterback at St. Xavier, and Urban was coaching the defensive backs at St. Xavier, but he was also spending a lot of time with my good friend John Sabatello. Now I say good friend, but he was our offensive coordinator at the time. And John has told me some stories where Urban would come to his house and they would just watch a lot of film. And Urban was very interested in what we were doing offensively. And I will tell you that we were, for 1985, we were doing some stuff that nobody else was doing. And to me, I think that really planted a seed because we had a fun offense that year. We threw for a bazillion yards. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And I tend to ask people like a trivia question, like, where did Urban Meyer get his coaching start? And most people think, they see Bowling Green or Ohio State, and they don't know that it started at St. Xavier because I believe he just graduated from UC in Cincinnati, played a little bit of minor league baseball, and then got his coaching start at St. Xavier.
How about that? And then the next year you go to Ohio State, and he ends up being a grad assistant there, right? I mean, so the early days.
He did, and there's a story there too, which I never knew until Urban and I played in a golf outing. It's probably been 6 years. It was just actually in 2014, in May of 2014, for a fundraiser locally, and we played together for 6 holes. And he says, he goes, "Do you know how I got the GA job at Ohio State?" I said, "Well, no." He said, "Well, the coaches from Ohio State were down recruiting me, and but they also needed a graduate assistant. So they talked to our head coach, Steve Rasso, and conversation back and forth, handshake deal. We need a guy. You want to be the guy?" He said, "Yes." Shook hands. And the coach even told him, he said, "Look, we need an offensive GA or a defensive GA. Tell him you want tight ends. When Earl Bruce asks you when you go up there, tell him you want to be the tight ends." And that's how it went down. And I had no idea until he told me that, years later.
How about that? Pretty cool story. A little background on Urban Meyer and Greg Frey with us, former Ohio State quarterback, and it started at St. Xavier. You mentioned defensive backs, what he played at Cincinnati, and then he starts coaching there, moves over to tight end. But at Florida, especially, becomes known as an offensive innovator, and what he did with Alex Smith, even at Utah. How do you view him as a coach? I mean, is he an offensive guy? Is he just this CEO type? I mean, how would you label Urban as a head coach?
I mean, he's grown and matured. I mean, he's a true head coach, but from an offensive standpoint, he is brilliant. And because I was coaching high school football in the early 2000s, and I was watching a lot of Utah film because I was really just really curious as to what he was doing and why they were having so much success. And like any other coach, I was an offensive coordinator in high school. I was borrowing plays. I'm like, I'm using that. I'll use that. So even back then, I remember just how ahead of the game he was. And he just kept innovating. It really, I think when he got to Florida is where it really got fun because he had some great talent. And he knew how to maximize the talent with his creativity. And to me, he was a trendsetter in the game of college football, the way that he helped to change offensive football.
I read a lot of stuff about Urban, going back. Again, we have a familiarity a little bit from the Florida days just down the road here in Jacksonville. And obviously we saw what he did at Ohio State and what he's become. But if you look back and you spend some time in his hometown, the word intensity comes to mind. I mean, it's just the word I keep hearing. By the way, brilliance, another one that I hear too from a coaching standpoint, but intensity. Is that what you see even when you're in a golf cart with him at a charity golf tournament?
Oh, absolutely. I've not met too many people that are more intense than I am competitively. Earl Bruce was one of them. And Earl was obviously, one of my mentors. I believe Urban would probably say the same thing because Earl's the one that ended up hiring him at Ohio State and certainly helped him along the way in his coaching journey. I count on one hand the number of people that are more intense than me and Earl Bruce, and Urban would be on that list. When he came to Ohio State, people asked me, "Well, how's Urban going to do?" I said, "Well, Urban's going to win." Because Urban has decided that he is going to win and he will find a way. And it may not be pleasant sometimes to be around him in those cases, but he will it, and it will happen. And it did. Obviously, they went 12-0 the first year, and his track record is really second to none. But I will say one more thing that he is a very intense individual. But what really caught my attention when he was at Ohio State was his ability to continue to learn. And there's some great coaches out there. I've been a high school coach. I've analyzed. I've been in the media, obviously, for years. There's a certain percentage of coaches that think they got all the answers. And it's probably a lower percentage. But when you won, 3 national championships, you got a lot of the answers. But Urban's the type that he continues to grow and learn. And he did that at Ohio State. And one thing in particular he did, he reached out to a good friend of mine, Tim Kite, in the 2013 season. You've probably heard of Tim. And in the leadership training that he imparted, that Urban allowed on himself and the team at Ohio State at the end of the 2013 season into the 2014 season. And we all know what happened. The end of the 2014 season, they win the national championship. So to me, it's about Urban saying, okay, look, we got a lot of stuff figured out, but how can we get better? And because of that, he continued to elevate as a coach. And I believe that's one of the reasons that he will have success in the NFL, because he knows it's a different thing. There's certain things he's got to do differently, but he understands how to adapt and grow and learn. And that's one value that he has in spades.
Greg Frey with us, former Ohio State quarterback, spent some time in the early years around Urban Meyer as well. And you bring up an interesting point, because I think especially here in the state of Florida, it didn't end well with the Gators, despite winning 2 national titles, which I tell Gator fans all the time, you should build a statue for them because of that. But it doesn't end well. They don't do well after. And so there's this perception of Urban Meyer. But I don't think people have allowed the last part you just said, that he's grown, even matured. He's maybe different than he was even in 2006, 2008, 2009. When you see the stuff about Urban Meyer, this polarizing guy, the way I've labeled it after my trip is, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, I'm not sure you do. Does some of this polarizing labeling of Meyer surprise you? Do you think that's kind of just the way it is?
It doesn't surprise me at all. I think it is the way it is. I mean, when you have success in the United States of America, there's a certain amount of people that are, not going to like you, or, once, they want to see the fall. And when the way he left Florida, it wasn't all clean, obviously. And look, he had some issues at Ohio State. Every coach is going to do that, or have some sort of things that you draw on as negatives. But I think from Urban's perspective, again, I'll go back to, he cared so much about his players. He's going to be hard on you. There's no doubt about that. And again, I'm referencing really college players at this point. Very tough on them, but also love them. And I relate back to the way Earl Bruce was. When I played for Earl Bruce, I could probably use the word, I disliked him greatly, but I respected him so much. And I knew at the end of the day, he loved me. And Urban is just like that. He and Shelley are tremendous with players. I don't think that's going to change at the NFL level, although there's not as much I would call babysitting with NFL players as there would be with college players. But at the end of the day, he truly cares about the players and the team. He may come across as so driven that, if you're not in his focus, you don't like it because he's not looking at you or paying attention to you. But that's the way he's wired. And, that will turn some people off. But at the end of the day, he does care. I think that's important to know.
I'm going to let you go, but let me ask you one question outside of Urban Meyer. You are a quarterback by trade. You train quarterbacks. Even now, you tutored and mentored Brady Quinn, of course. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's coming to Jacksonville. When you look at this guy play football, it's hard for me to find anybody to say anything bad about him. Will you be the first?
No, I won't. I'd say he stepped on the Buckeyes plenty of times until the last game here when the Buckeyes got the best of him. But I'm very impressed by what he does. I watched some film of him this year. As Ohio State was getting ready to play Clemson, I had some extra time. I really broke the film down as much as I could, and I was so impressed. He's just so sound fundamentally. He gets the ball out of his hands. And at the NFL level, you got to be a drop back guy. You got to get the ball out of your hands, and there's nobody better than that than Tom Brady. And Tom's not the most mobile guy, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But he understands I got to get the ball out of my hands, which comes with a mileage of pre-snap reads, mileage of film, and just time and reps, et cetera. And there's no doubt Trevor Lawrence, I'm not going to compare him to Tom Brady, but certainly his track record so far of winning and playing, from a standpoint of excellence at the quarterback position is there. So clearly a top prospect, and I would think he'll do well at the next level.
Greg Frey, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks for chatting a little bit about Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence. Be well.
You got it. Thank you, Brent.